Joining me today is Jamie Beck. She's president and managing attorney for Free to Thrive. They work to help survivors clear up their records. They are one of the sponsors of AB 262, and they have helped us to make sure that we get this right. You're going to hear from Ariane Pauls. She is a survivor from Fresno who is thriving. She's going to share her story of trying to clear her record as she rebuilt her life and started to the path she's on now. Let me give a little statement. We'll talk a little bit about what the bill does, and then we'll have Jamie and Ariane here. The significance of this bill is that, thankfully, the way that our legal system treats people who have been trafficked is changing, and changing for the better. We know so much more today than ever before about traffickers, how they coerce, how they force their victims to do horrible things that leave mental, physical, and emotional scars. They're also forced to commit crimes. And with the misdemeanor crimes on their records, like loitering, trespassing, theft, things of that nature, survivors are often unable to find a job. So as these survivors work toward rebuilding their new life, and they are making strides going forward, they find obstacles. Those obstacles are within the justice system that make starting their new life over almost impossible. And so AB 262 is going to make it faster and easier for survivors to clear their record of nonviolent offenses as they begin their new lives. And this bill is expected today to unanimously pass out of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. It has overwhelming support and no opposition. Let me give you an idea of the broad mix of support here. I think this is a sign of how we are in California treating the victims of sexual exploitation. Obviously, the sponsors Made for Them, Free to Thrive. We have cities, counties, the American Academy of Pediatrics for California, the California Alliance of Child and Family Services, California Catholic Conference, the California District Attorneys Association, and the California Public Defenders Association, just to name a few. Let me talk just briefly about two of the areas that this bill directly affects. I want to state the problem and the solution the bill provides. Current law creates a catch-22 that makes it almost impossible for survivors to clear their criminal records, pay all fines, and meet all probation before they can ask a court to clear their record. But without a clear record, unemployment is almost impossible. And without employment, paying a fee to the court is impossible. So what the bill does is a survivor can ask to clear their record, regardless of whether they have paid their fines or met probation requirements. The second problem area that the bill touches on is the purging of records. Law enforcement agencies in the California Department of Justice currently have 1 year after a judge's ruling to purge a survivor's records. For a survivor unable to pass a background check to get a job, 1 year is an eternity and could mean the difference between success and failure. So under AB 262, survivors will have their records purged with local law enforcement or the California Department of Justice within 90 days of that judge's order. I want to hand this now back to Jamie Beck. She's the president and managing attorney for Free to Thrive, and she has some comments and a statement about what the bill does, and then we will hear from Ariane. Jamie?
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Pattison, for the introduction and for leading on this bill. Free to Thrive is a Southern California-based nonprofit that provides legal services to human trafficking survivors. Today, I want to share a story with you about one of our vacatur clients. I'll call her Vanessa. When I first met Vanessa in 2018, she had criminal records in San Diego, Orange, and Los Angeles counties. Her criminal charges all happened while she was being trafficked and were directly related to her exploitation. Vanessa was afraid to leave San Diego because she had open warrants in OC and LA. Her charges were over 12 years old. In the 12 years since her last arrest, she had escaped her trafficker, become a leader in the anti-trafficking movement, and a published author. Over the course of the next year and a half, she met regularly with a pro bono attorney and bravely shared her story. Her attorney was able to get the warrants recalled and the charges against her dismissed. But those charges remained on her rap sheet for the whole world to see every time she applied for a job or an apartment. So her attorney helped her petition for vacatur to get those charges removed from her record for good. I was there with her the day her criminal record was finally vacated. When we arrived in the courtroom, the judge immediately called her case. He congratulated her for all the hard work she had done to turn her life around, and then he got off of the bench to personally shake her hand. The courtroom erupted in applause. After we walked out of the courtroom, I told her, "That's the kind of thing you see in the movies, but never in real life." She said that was the most healing experience she could possibly ask for. That day was in May of 2019. The court orders in Vanessa's case required compliance from 12 government agencies. A year and a half later, not a single agency had complied with the court's order. During this year and a half, Vanessa applied for a new job and moved to a new place. Her employer and her landlord both ran background checks and saw her record. The only saving grace for Vanessa was that she was able to show them the court order and explain her background. The entire purpose of the vacatur law is to prevent survivors from having to relive their trauma by explaining their criminal background over and over again. Once we identified the issues with compliance, most of the agencies were compliant within 90 days. Sadly, we're still chasing down a few lingering agencies to destroy their records and give Vanessa the justice she so deserves. In 2016, I advocated for SB 823, which was the bill that created the vacatur law. I did this after seeing the barriers faced by human trafficking survivors like Vanessa as a result of their criminal records. Having a criminal record prevents survivors from obtaining housing, employment, and a higher education, among other things. This traps them into a life of exploitation. If you can't get a job, a place to live, or an education, how are you supposed to get out? After the vacatur law went into effect in 2017, I founded Free to Thrive to help human trafficking survivors vacate their criminal records. At Free to Thrive, nearly 75% of our survivor clients have a criminal record. The vast majority had no criminal history before they were trafficked, and their charges are directly related to their exploitation. In the 4 years since the law was passed, we have won 20 vacatur petitions on behalf of our clients. We have witnessed firsthand the power of this law to free trafficking survivors from the invisible chains of their exploitation caused by their lingering criminal records. In doing this work for the past 4 years, we have also identified major deficiencies in the complex system between the courts and the agencies bound by the court's orders. In every single one of our vacatur cases, the court order was not submitted to some of the agencies ordered to steal and destroy their records. In some cases, it was never submitted to any of them. Prior to discovering these deficiencies, all of our clients waited over a year to have their DOJ background cleared, and even longer to get compliance from other agencies. Free to Thrive has devoted countless hours to trying to achieve agency compliance with the court's orders. At this moment alone, we are actively working on 39 post-order compliance matters for 10 clients. These 10 clients are not just a number. They are survivors who have overcome significant trauma to escape their traffickers and begin rebuilding their lives. In each of our cases, once we identify and address the issues leading to non-compliance, the agencies usually comply within 90 days, and often much sooner. Most of these issues can be resolved by clarifying the language of the penal code so that the court clerks and the agencies mandated to comply have clear guidelines in carrying out the court's orders. That is why Free to Thrive is sponsoring AB 262. This bill will amend the vacatur law to create a much smoother path for post-order compliance. Free to Thrive is a small nonprofit. We have devoted significant time and resources to ensuring our clients get the justice they deserve, but we can't do this indefinitely. Moreover, many survivors' attorneys may not be aware of these challenges with compliance and may end their advocacy when they get a court order. This will leave countless survivors with a court order that is nothing more than a piece of paper in absence of agency compliance. Free to Thrive is deeply grateful to Assemblymember Patterson for listening to survivors like Vanessa and authoring AB 262. We urge the California Legislature to pass this bill so that criminalized survivors can get the justice they so deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate that. Arian Pauls is a survivor from Fresno, and she is thriving. Arian is sort of the heart and soul and the face of why I am passionate about what we are doing here. She's going to tell her story about how the difficulty in clearing her record, and she is, for me, an inspiration for the bill that we have offered. And thank you, Arian, for sharing your story. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate being able to not only share my story, but be a voice for others who are deeply struggle with this. I'll just start off by saying that after dealing with 4 years of extreme torment, along with that came records, came arrests, came court dates that my trafficker would just move me from city to city to avoid. And I built up a very lengthy criminal record, all misdemeanors and all related to being trafficked. So when I found myself in a position of being able to escape and start my life over, it wasn't over. I spent a good better part of a year applying to jobs everywhere. No job didn't get a resume or an application from me. I applied at all the McDonald's, all the Taco Bells in Fresno and Clovis, everywhere. I was so eager to have a normal job, a normal life, just get back to being free and have some sense of stability. At one point, I even took an interview on Christmas Eve and was told, you would be a great candidate, we just need to run your background check. When those places would not hire me, when those places that I knew would give convicted felons a chance, but wouldn't give me with misdemeanor charges a chance, it was heartbreaking. What was I gonna do next? Go back to the streets? I decided instead of turning back to the streets, I would try one last thing. I went to American Ambulance. I went and applied to their EMT program. I successfully passed, perfect attendance, top of my class. And I was so excited. In that summer, I took my national EMT test and got nationally certified as an EMT. So I went down to our local office to get my license to work. And I figured, you know what? They can't ignore the fact that I am licensed, that I am a good student, like I'm gonna get a job finally. And there was a lengthy disclosure process. And I did disclose what I could remember. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember everything. And I got a call back saying that, unfortunately, because of my record, I couldn't work. And that was the most difficult time for me. I remember sitting on my bed thinking, how do I get back to the streets? How do I go back to this life that I had so desperately escaped from? What am I going to do now? And it was hard. Like it's hard being defined. You escape something so horrific and now you're defined by your record and there was no help. And when I finally received employment, it was through a small shop that was willing to look past my record. And I will say this, that while I did gain employment and I do have meaningful employment now, it was not an easy road. It is not an easy road. It is still, to this day, 10 years later, I am still fighting my record. I am still being turned down and being told no. As an educator and a preventionalist specialist, I'm still being told, and I know that I can't go into certain places, that I cannot educate, that I cannot be a mentor in certain areas because of my record. And for those who do not have that support, or when they're the first time that they try to apply somewhere and they're being told no, that right there could send them back to the streets. And this bill is extremely important because there are so many hoops, so many legal hoops that we as survivors have to jump through, that we're fighting so hard as it is to become thrivers. We shouldn't have to jump through those hoops. We should have this chance to start our life new. We should have this one last thing keeping us tied to the pain, to the suffering, the things that we endured while we were being sold into these streets. So please do take into consideration and pass this bill, not on just my behalf, but on the behalf of all thrivers and survivors fighting to become thrivers. Thank you.